Call this Altoona City Council meeting to order Monday, February 13th at 6:15 p.m. We will now have a moment of silent prayer. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Linda, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Beatty?
Here.
Councilman Butterbaugh?
Here.
Councilman Carper?
Here.
Councilman Ickes?
Here.
Councilman Ellis?
Here.
Councilman Kelly?
Here.
Mayor Pacifico?
Here. Prior to public comment, need to announce that last month after the council meeting, we had an executive session to discuss personnel and potential litigation. And tonight we had an executive session to discuss potential litigation as well as receiving information on a matter that will come before council in the future. With that, we will open the floor for public comment.
Howdy, Council. Devin Saylor, 424 Crawford Avenue. I just came here today because I actually wanted to make a request of the City Council that I would like to ask if I could make, and some of my my business partner colleagues, oh yeah, maybe I should speak a little closer, could make a presentation before the council for a business idea that we have. I know that might sound a little weird to propose a business idea to the city, but the idea that we have is for a film and entertainment production company. But we think that we have a lot of ideas that we have for it to integrate here locally, and we need the cooperation probably of the city. For one of the ideas, for example, would be a comprehensive listing of all of the landmarks as well as city resources and so forth, so we can help any potential producers that come here to make projects have a quicker access to those things and those resources. A big part of our plan is that because of the availability of the resources and how quickly locations you can go from back and forth, et cetera, saves them a lot of money. And it's basically building an ecosystem, something similar to what other areas and cities like Pittsburgh and Philly and even up in Erie, they've been doing that as well. So, of course, I don't want to go into detail too much about it all now, but if there was a level of interest to maybe take 10, 15 minutes for, say, the next work session or something, if that'd be something you'd be interested in having a presentation and hearing more about.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Can I email you, Mayor Pacifico, and see?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Then that's pretty much it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no more public comment, we will close the floor and move on to a presentation from Rebecca Brown, Director of Codes and Inspections.
At the request of Mayor and Council, a report has been prepared showing the challenges and successes that we've faced as a city, at least in 2022. We'll highlight residential homes, challenges and successes, new businesses, and commercial reuse and construction. Right off the bat, I wanted to show you some challenges that we have and that we face with non-compliance of some of our homes. This home in particular, we began enforcement in 2019. It's an owner-occupied property. There's been over $1,000 in city fees assessed. The owner has been found guilty at the Magisterial District Justice. We did file misdemeanor charges against the owner, and a bench warrant was issued for her failure to appear at district or at county court. As you can see, the property's in deplorable condition. This is one of the significant challenges that we have faced with an owner-occupied property. We just recently learned that the owner moved out of state, and we entered the property into our demolition program, and we will be taking the property in front of the Altoona City Planning Commission for blight determination. This is another property that we've had enforcement against since 2020. 312 Fourth Avenue, it was an owner-occupied property. It was vacated at a certain time, probably a year or two ago, when the owner's spouse passed away. She moved out of the city. We had hearings at the magistrate. The owner informed us that they had wanted to make repairs to the property, but there was no funding to do so. She requested assistance through the demolition program and had to submit information to be able to be accepted into that program, and this property will be demolished.
Rebecca, could I interrupt just for a minute?
Absolutely.
Just to educate the rest of council, the mayor and I were actually at this property this summer, and we spoke with the lady. If you look at the back view for the brick house, the one-story brick house, she was working in her yard, and she has it fixed up pretty nice, and she actually had rats running from the house there. So this is another situation that is impacting the neighborhood in a negative way.
This is a property at 1119 6th Avenue. You can see that the front is all but melting onto the sidewalk. This property, we began enforcement with demolition enforcement, so to speak, and repairs in 2018. It was owner occupied. It was occupied by an elderly owner. We had to work we had to work a lot of magic to get the owner out of the property. We filed citations at the magistrate, which he would not appear at the hearings. He had no funding to repair the home. The next of kin did not want to take responsibility for the home. The property was entered into the demolition program, but was sold at tax sale prior to the demolition being complete. There is some hope. The new owner did apply for permits, something we don't see very often after a property sold at tax sale. This property, he actually submitted building plans for the repairs to the home. They were approved and the permits have been issued. I don't believe the work has been started yet. We're keeping a close eye on this one. 1001 19th Avenue. This is one that I'd like to show you it's in progress. Our enforcement started with this in 2017. It was absentee owners. Very difficult to get anything accomplished. There was no response from the owners. A new owner purchased the property in early 2002, immediately went to work on getting permits, submitting a remedial work schedule. That we did make contact with the owner, of course, the new owner, and let them know what the conditions were needed to be repaired and addressed. They did obtain permits, and it's moving slowly, but it's definitely going in the direction we need it to go in, which is a plus. This is a success story, not that this property was in horrible disrepair, but this was an example, 1806 6th Avenue, of a property of a reinvestment by a landlord, actually. This property was always actually sitting in good shape, but the owner took it upon himself or herself to reinvest in the property, something that we don't see very often of this scope. The property looks great. It really does. It's right along the main thoroughfare. We like to see that reinvestment in these rental properties for sure.
Is this a local landlord?
It is. The next one, this is an older one, 1524 North 7th Avenue. This property was in really bad shape. Sat vacant for a while. We started enforcement in 18. We had a lot of court hearings on this one. We had granted extensions. The owner needed quite a bit of time to work what he needed to do on this property. He did obtain permits, and the construction and the renovations were completed in 2021. He ended up selling the property, and it's now owner occupied. It's definitely a success story, but it took some time to get there. This was a bad one. I don't know if anybody remembers down there. This is a back view of the property. You can see on the left, the brick had fallen from the left side of the house. The stairs were gone. Some windows, almost all the windows actually on the left side were missing.
Is that set up as a multi-unit?
It's actually a single family.
Oh.
I think it had been multi-unit at one point.
It actually looks really good. I drove
It-
down, Rebecca, and it looks really, really nice.
It's beautiful. He did an amazing job on that. And again, it took time. That was one that we definitely had to work with him. We had to work together on this. He wanted the end goal. It was just difficult for him to get there. 2710 7th Avenue. This is just an example of how something as simple as siding, or it could have been paint even, can change the look of a house. Again, right along our main thoroughfare of 7th Avenue. The property sat needing attention. Exterior, the siding, wooden siding needed painted. Rather than painting, they opted for siding. It's just an example of how something that simple may not be inexpensive, but can transform the look of a house. We did have enforcement action out on this. Extensions were granted. They did complete the work in 2022, sold the property, and it's now owner occupied, and it really looks great. This is an overview of our business licenses, new business licenses that we've issued in the last 3 years. And you can see there's a nice increase, certainly the last 3 years. I could have gone back further, and there would probably been more of a history of the increase. You can see in 2020 or 2022 alone, we had 176 new business licenses issued by our department. To break that down, out of those 176 new businesses, we had 68 in-town businesses, 64 out-of-town, and 42 home-based. What that means really for the out-of-town would be, if you're not familiar, a contractor coming in from out of town but needing that business license to be able to work. That's what we say out of town. Someone that really doesn't have that physical business address in the city, but they do work here. So they still have to, they're still required to get that business license. Home-based is obviously what it means. If somebody has a computer repair shop or something that, there's two types of home-based businesses, minor and major impact. We had 42 of those. And then 68 in town where they actually have the physical location within the city. And the next slide shows some really wonderful reuses of properties that had formerly been vacant, definitely didn't look the way they do now. I could have shown a lot more pictures just like this, but the one Daily Grind, that was renovated both inside and out. Permits were obtained. Of course, that's, right now being used as the coffee shop, a coffee shop and a breakfast establishment. Mile Level Physical Therapy looks amazing. It's on the corner down on Chestnut Avenue there. That facade was improved remarkably. They put a lot of work into that building, and we all know how it looked prior. It wasn't in serious code violation, but it certainly looks fantastic now. And of course, the Curry Building. I wanted to add that as well. That was decades of looking at that former Vipon building. This obviously just transforms that entire block in that area. That's just kind of a highlight of some of the businesses. I know you wanted to see some reuse and to kind of find out where we are in terms of business licensing. It is improving. It's increasing every year. I think a lot of that is thanks to the staff that we have in the department that enforces the licensing process that people have to go through. There are people out there that will go as long as they can without maybe getting their business license, but you eventually have to come in and get one. So I think that we can attribute it to the enforcement efforts in that regard. And looking ahead, our city businesses, again, it seemed to obviously increase each year. We have an excellent reuse of vacant commercial buildings in the city for business use. Our businesses have received ARPA funding, the first round, and we're obviously getting ready now, apparently for a second round. And I do know that businesses have other funding sources available to them should they seek it out and, try to find out other areas to help them get started. Whether it be, for new construction, for repairs, or to expand their business altogether. But the thing that, I'd like to talk about a little bit is the current housing stock in the city and understanding that many homes are in need of repair. It's obvious from our conversations with homeowners at court, at the magistrate level, that the funding is not there for these homeowners that want to make the repairs. We all know people that do not want to make the repairs, homeowners and landlords alike. The homeowners that want to make the repairs, they just don't have it available to them. We do have one option for assistance currently, and the magistrate does recommend that these homeowners apply for this, and it would obviously be our home repair grant through CDBG funding. That grant is, it's very marginal what it can do for these residents. It can take months, sometimes years, and it does offer a whole house only rehabilitation. If somebody needs a new front porch, it's very unlikely that they're going to get a new front porch or replacement. It's literally a whole house repair program. I know that the city's starting on our new emergency roof program. $50,000 is currently allocated towards that program. That will probably replace about 4 or 5 roofs in the city. And I know our code staff determined, just off the top of our heads, a minimum of 25 owner-occupied properties that we provided to the planning department. We did find out in late 2022, ARPA funding was implemented to Blair County in the amount of, I believe, $700,000. But there's unknown specifics right now who in the county will receive this funding and how it will be administered. I would like to consider possibly implementing some kind of homeowner facade mini grant program. The city of Easton, the city of Johnstown, numerous cities and municipalities across the state, they offer this type of assistance to homeowners. Basically for, even if it would be a match, something that we could provide the homeowners for assistance.
So obviously, we go over pretty much every work session what we intend to do with the ARPA funds. When Rebecca was putting this together, and she's been talking to me for some time about some sort of a program that would assist homeowners with maintaining their homes and improving their properties, which I think is certainly a valuable option for use of the funds, and certainly would be a qualifying use of those funds. So we can come back with a more detail on it, but I just when talking to Rebecca, I said, if you want to touch on it, I'll pick it up, and we can talk more further about it here in the near future.
So, a couple quick questions. You referenced these programs through Easton and Johnstown. Did they have some type of income qualification on those for those
They do.
dollars? Okay. Rebecca, your department, I've been pretty clear about this. You have how many code officers?
We just hired a 5th one today, so 5.
And you have how many outstanding properties with ongoing?
I believe we have 720 open violations right now.
And each one of those requires a certain timeline according to law and getting before the judge, et cetera. So,
Correct.
I mean, I think we're definitely in a position to try to right the ship here to some degree and really try to turn this stuff around. The one item I might want to throw out is some of these landlords that have fixed up some of these properties before, whether they're local or not to the area. Do you think maybe it's worth us maybe trying to see one, if they own additional properties, that they maybe have an interest in redeveloping some of the other properties that they have in their portfolio, and just trying to gauge the interest and or discussion points of what maybe we can do to facilitate some further investment in those properties.
I certainly think that's worth it. I think that the current landlords that do pay attention and reinvest into their properties, they keep going. They don't usually stop with one. If they have a half a dozen, you'll eventually see the half a dozen tended to. It's really the people, and it's not obviously landlords and homeowners alike, It's the people that don't ever get to the first one. You'll never ask them to do
Right.
anything. So, yes, we can certainly look at that.
Okay, thank you.
I really like the idea of the residential home program because it's very important to keep that percentage of owner-occupied homes. We're around, 68 now, something like that, somewhere in the 60s. But either way, it's very important to keep that number high because that's something that really keeps the heart of the city where it needs to be. Good job on this. You guys really do a good job. Your department does a lot with a little, and you guys certainly work very hard at what you do.
Thank you.
I think this roof program is really a good idea and probably needs to be expanded further.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there's numerous properties around town that just have holes in the roof. And the construction doesn't have a good roof. It's caving on it. And, having some ways to address it. And we talked about how to do it. And involve the hole in the roof net. And it's a nice neighborhood, really nice neighborhood. And it just needs, you have trouble finding out who owns it, getting it on some of those conditions. And I think from a public safety standpoint, I think it's something we probably have to look at, further enforcement. Trying to get a hold of this property and stuff. And just the tax base is not another parent house around. If you have to resort to getting the code before, then it really helps.
Do you have, I have a second question. How many dollars a year are we spending with CDBG dollars for the demo program? I know that's a loaded question, Diana, I'm sorry.
I didn't bring the number with me, but we can spend up to 30% of our program funds, that's outside of admin. So I think, what is it, about 200,000 that we allocate a year?
I think that's about, yeah, I think that does about 10 to 12 homes.
And what's the turnaround, so to application to completion of tear down, what's the average turnaround on us being successful with those funds?
Quickly, that last year we had a little bit of a delay because the program was not funded the year before, and then this year HUD had a staffing issue with COVID still, there was still a delay, so we got our contract late, so we really can't measure on that, but typically if you, I mean, you would know this better than I do, but it has to go, the property has to go to the planning commission first, which is something that's local ordinance, okay, protects, you no longer have a vacant property review board, so it goes to planning commission for blight determination, and that really protects the city because it shows a second set of eyes, it's like not a bad, like you're not picking on somebody. We also do a windshield, appraisal, which was something a previous solicitor had, told us that we should do. So we order one of those, and then we run it through the State Historic Preservation Office for our funds, but these days that's overnight. So then it's just a matter of getting quotes, and there are just a couple contractors here. So let's say, like right now, Rebecca, we have funds available, so what would this, in your experience, is your start to finish when the funds are available? That includes the planning commission determination.
I mean, it can be months.
But you have to go through that step to protect yourself, because otherwise it could look like, that somebody could claim that you're picking on them, or you didn't give them, that their house was worth a lot of money, and you didn't compensate them and so forth, so we go through certain steps to do that. But yes.
Okay,
Well, people have property rights, and
Sure.
those property rights are very important, and that's why codes is one of the hardest jobs in the city, because you have to balance that property rights with at what point are they becoming irresponsible, and at what point does that irresponsibility enter into now you're trespassing upon the neighbors by virtue of you're lowering their property values, you're creating a hindrance to their public health, safety, welfare. And so it's a very difficult balance. And the real issue with blight is almost 100% of the time, it's the condition of another problem. And that's what makes it so. Blight and homelessness, as much as we like to tackle these issues, pretty much all the time, they are the primary condition of a pre-existing problem. And so that's what makes it so difficult to get traction on this. But I really believe over the last number of years, we've been able to just continue to improve and do much better. So it's good to see the improvement there.
And I would like to say, and I'll discuss this separately, you know, because we bring us, we hadn't thought it through, but it's public hearing, someone from the treatment, like was there from the county. And she talked to us about various funds that they have for different types of projects, and one of those sources may benefit you in what you would like to do. So, that was just last week, so if we can discuss that. I think it was the local transfer tax funds or something, but I don't want to speak out of turn, I want to be accurate.
I think the way we've fostered that relationship between us and the county planning commission is going to be of great benefit too, because now we can relate to one another's challenges and solutions to the problem. Councilman Nickes had a question there a little bit ago. I know it wasn't that long ago where we were averaging 25 to 30 raisings. And so I'm not sure exactly what the average has been for the last 2 or 3 years, but for a number of years, it would range between 25 to 30 with the CDBG program.
I would like to add one thing is, if you see other communities where they start a demo program, and I'm not to say it's everything, but the city's been on top of the demo for a long time, so
Yes.
we don't see kind of mass demolition projects that some of these other communities are seeing.
I agree with that, and I've worked in a lot of other communities, and Altoona seems to be way ahead of that. I would like to just see us go to the next chapter where we're trying to catch these houses before they get to the demolition program. With that being said, I'd like to throw this out to my colleagues here. I'd like for us to do a work session. I initially thought it just a work session on housing, but I'm wondering, and again, opening this up for discussion, do we want to do one for new housing and a separate one for housing rehab? I think the last work session, I think we vetted out a lot of things in a period of time, and if we can just do a work session specific to one topic, I think we can make a lot of hay while the sun's shining, so to speak.
Well, I think we ought to make it two, because I think new housing, as the redevelopment authority assembles property to be redeveloped, I think we need to have a plan going forward with it. And then also have one to try to catch some of these houses before we lose them. Because if we're tearing down 20 to 25 houses a year at $500 a year in lost revenue, you do that for 10 years, that really starts to impact the city in a negative way. And I think going forward, trying to turn that ship and try to catch the houses in a repairable manner before they get to demolition is going to be key to keeping the city financially viable.
I'm absolutely fine with us doing 2 separate work sessions.
I think if we do a new construction work session, that should be a joint work session with Redevelopment Authority and ABCD Corp as well. Anybody else have anything for this discussion? No? Okay. Thanks, Rebecca. Good
Rebecca,
job.
thank you very much. I appreciate all your work on that.
Nice job, Rebecca.
All right, we'll move on to the resolutions. Linda?
Item A is approving the minutes of the Altoona City Council meeting held, hold on one second. Press this again. Held Monday, January 9th, 2023. Item B is authorizing an agility agreement with PennDOT for the exchange of services and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item C is authorizing the city manager's signature to implement the PennDOT Transportation Alternatives Set-Aside Grant for Margaret Avenue's sidewalk upgrades and for the mayor to sign the resolution and for the city clerk to attest to same. Item D is awarding the North 7th Avenue and North 11th Street roadway reconstruction project to Granis Brothers of Hollidaysburg in the amount of $345,432.60, of which $200,000 is payable from ARPA funds and $145,432.60 is payable from the highway aid funds, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item E is adopting the developers agreement attached here too between the city and Greystone Grand Palazzo for the Grand Palazzo Phase 3 project payable from the Special Reserve Fund, and further authorizing the mayor to execute the agreement and the city clerk to attest to same. Item F is authorizing a subrecipient agreement between the city and UPMC Altoona for the use of ARPA funds in the amount of $100,000 for construction of an emergency psychiatric assessment treatment and healing unit known as an empath unit within the Altoona Emergency Department, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item G is approving the City of Altoona American Rescue Plan Act 2023 Business District Revitalization Grant Program Guidelines attached here too, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item H is approving a second subrecipient agreement between the City of Altoona and the Altoona Blair County Development Corporation for administration of a revolving loan fund for the use of ARPA funds in order to provide low-interest loans to qualified borrowers, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item I is rescinding Resolution 0012-23 adopted January 9, 2023, which appointed Jesse Ickes to the Altoona City Planning Commission. Item J is appointing Randall Deviney to the Altoona Code Appeals Board. Said term shall expire the first Monday of January 2028. Item K is approving the naming of the new weight room at the 6th Ward Community Center, the Ty Clouser Memorial Weight Room, in honor and in memory of Ty Clouser, who grew up in the 6th Ward neighborhood and served as a youth coach, trainer, mentor, and role model for numerous area youth. Is there anything that needs to be pulled for a separate vote? Hearing none, I'll call for the consent vote. Councilman Beatty,
Yes.
Councilman Butterbaugh,
Yes.
Councilman Carper,
Yes.
Councilman Ellis,
Yes.
Councilman Ickes,
Yes.
Councilman Kelly,
Yes.
Mayor Pacifico,
Yes.
and the consent vote passes 7-0. We have two ordinances on the agenda for introduction. The first is an ordinance of the City of Altoona, Blair County, Pennsylvania, authorizing execution of a cable franchise agreement between the city and Comcast of Colorado, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, LLC. Is there a council member willing to introduce this?
So moved.
This ordinance was introduced by Mayor Pacifico. The second ordinance is an ordinance of the City of Altoona, Blair County, Pennsylvania, which amends Chapter 640, Subdivision of Land and Land Development, Article 1, Subdivisions and Land Development, generally Section 640-2 of the Altoona City Code, to permit the mayor and members of City Council to concurrently serve as members of the Altoona City Planning Commission and to reaffirm the remainder of Chapter 640. Is there a council member willing to introduce this ordinance?
So moved.
This ordinance was introduced by Councilman Ellis.
Okay, we'll move on to city manager updates. Omar?
Thank you, Mayor. So just to update council, the mayor, along with Nate and some other staff members, met with other key stakeholders in a kickoff meeting for the refurbishing of the transportation center. Just wanted to pass along a couple of dates for you. The plans should be finalized by August of this year. They will be bid, and then the bids will happen in October, and the construction should be complete by the end of next year. So just some things move slowly, and this is one of them. Also, I wanted to let you know that some of you have really helped in this process, I believe. Others have pushed it along, and that is working with staff. We've developed kind of one-page development overview flow charts that will be available for folks in the community. Right now, it's just going to over a kind of a final look by Dave McFarland with the county planning organization, just to see if there's maybe something we might have missed or something we could include. But it's really a one-pager that's just jam-packed with a lot of information, but it's fairly easy to understand. So that'll be rolled out here in the near future. I think it'll be valuable for development in the city. And the last thing I had was that, you know, we're reviewing some of the distinctions in the various zones along Kettle Street. We talked about that at the last work session. My understanding is that what happened back in 2003, which was one of the questions, is like, why is it like this? Well, we don't know specifically about that particular part of town, but in general, the process really simplified what was going on beforehand. So I think there were maybe a lot of zones, a lot of spot zoning going on. Really, and I know it was a fairly exhaustive process they went through, but nonetheless, we're looking at the distinction between the various zoning districts in that area, and we were planning to address that at the next work session. So, and that's all I have.
Thanks, Omar. Council discussion items. Councilman Kelly.
Nothing tonight, Mayor, thank you.
Councilman Carper.
I have nothing tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilman Butterball.
Nothing here.
Councilman Ickes.
Sorry about that. Rebecca, in addition to the presentation tonight, I do want to thank you for you, Nate, and some of the others who helped pull together those flow charts to put all the requirements for land development and other developmental efforts in the city on a one-page document that we can really help facilitate new opportunity and reinvestment in our community. So thank you.
Certainly.
Okay.
I just
Councilman
wanted to
Beatty?
thank Rebecca and her department for the hard work, and Diane, I'm sure she works with her also, to get some new processes put in place to get ahead of the housing issues that we've been plagued with for a number of years. So that going forward, that will be very helpful. Thank you.
We'll take questions from the media now.
Thanks. Can somebody say, maybe Omar, what are the main changes in the guidelines for the business district revitalization grants?
I apologize, Bill. Could you
That's
repeat that question?
Can you say what are the main changes in the guidelines, if there are any major ones, in the guidelines for the business district revitalization grants?
Really no major changes.
Oh, okay. And can somebody say what the status is of Comcast's efforts to set up operations here in the city?
They're moving along.
Any idea when they're going to be, when
Some-
the service is going to be available to
I
customers?
don't have that. No.
Is the franchise agreement the same as the one for Breezeline, basically?
No.
It's not. Well, can you say how it's different?
I mean, basically, I think there's a copy of the agreement was attached.
Should be. Yeah.
To the proposed ordinance. There's just some different items relative to payment of fees, things of that nature.
They're pretty much, there are hard limits on what you can demand of them, right?
Yeah, federal law basically outlines, the Cable Act kind of outlines a lot of that. I would note that, if you'll recall, Bill, the council had previously retained the Cohen Group law office to negotiate this. and they're the ones that handled it, and I believe the mayor was involved with that as well, so.
Okay. Let's see. Would anybody care to comment further, I guess there was some comments on it, on Rebecca's proposal for, and Omar's proposal for a home repair program, and how much money that might require?
Yeah, I've been in, supportive of something similar to that since we've started the business revolving loan fund last year. I thought, if we could do this for businesses, there's no reason why we can't do it for residential homeowners as well. The holdup to that is, Bill, we don't know who would run that program. I met last year with a couple people from some of our local banks to see if we could kind of put together a consortium of some people from the local community banks that could kind of act as like a loan review committee who could help distribute the funds and stuff like that. But it didn't seem like that was something that was able to happen. So yeah, that's going to be one of the issues as we work to develop this. If that's the way we go, is how are we going to manage it? How are we going to distribute the funds and that sort of thing?
Would this be, are you envisioning this as a loan program rather than a grant program?
Well, I mean, that's kind of how I envisioned it. I don't know. I mean, a grant program is going to be a one and done type thing. Whereas if we are able to structure it in a way that it could kind of keep revolving back in, and the money can keep being redistributed out into the community, that, in my opinion, that would be the ideal way to go. But we'll have to see.
Is that something that you would expect to be discussing at a work session in the pretty near future?
Possibly, yeah.
Sounds like the future work sessions are going to have a lot of housing discussions in them, so I'm sure that everything is going to be on the table for those discussions.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe this program would be a positive game changer in the city.
Do you see it, Dave, as a loan or a grant program, or?
Ideally, the revolving loan would be best, something that could keep going and just continue to help others.
I think to answer your question, Bill, like the amount of money that we don't have enough money today to probably fix all the challenges that we have, up front. So if we're able to designate a certain dollar amount today to get into a program to have positive efforts being put to work and trying to transform neighborhoods, if those dollars are being paid back into the program, that it can be continued for other people to utilize their home properties, etc. I think that is an asset to our community long term.
Mm-hmm. Is there any thought to, I mean, a lot of the people who can't afford to make repairs, do you think a lot of them couldn't afford to pay back loans also?
Well, there are programs, Bill, that are starting to come to light. The Senate put a significant amount of money statewide into the budget for this year, and that money's coming down through the counties, and there's been several articles in the media about that in the last couple of weeks. And I think our county has around $1 million, give or take, a little bit coming, and a lot of that's targeted for low income.
For housing?
Yes, housing
Okay.
repairs.
Behind every blighted property, there's a story, and a high percentage of those stories are very difficult. People going through difficulties for various reasons. It's not always as simple as, let's make them fix a property. There's usually a pretty sad case of events that led up to that situation.
Nate, could you say what the North 7th Avenue and the North 11th Street reconstruction will involve? Like how many blocks, and is that a total reconstruction as opposed to paving?
Yeah, it's the last section. It's a 2-block section, Juniata, that's pretty rough. It's just called gravel at this point, so it's just, complete reconstruction. Drainage ties into a lot of the grant programs we've been successful with through the conservation district over the last couple of years. So this is kind of like the last piece of it.
And these were never actually paved properly?
No, that's correct.
And could somebody say what the city is doing for the Grand Palazzo Phase 3 project?
Doing very similar to what they did with the Silk Mill property. Sidewalks, lighting, signage.
This is the property that's not the one connected by the bridge, right? But the one that's coming out onto
It's the
6th
one that's
Avenue?
being constructed right now behind, along 8th Avenue, behind the current Grand Palazzo. So this is going to be I believe it's called the Casa Bella.
Oh, it is the one that's connected with,
Yeah.
going to be connected with the bridge? then?
Yes.
Okay. And how much money is going to be contributed from the ARPA grant to the ABCD, the Phase 2 of the ABCD loan program?
$1 million.
Okay. And finally, would anybody care to say, I know there were was one or two comments, but any further comments on the development of the flow chart? Like what kind of benefits that'll have for business development?
Bill, the biggest problem we had in the past was a developer would call the city and want to do a development, and there really wouldn't be a clear designated path for them, you know, to start at A and get to Z. So this is just a little bit clearer to give them direction as to what departments, what is required before they line up financing and all that. It's just something that the city really needed to do to make it easier and clearer for developers.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned.